Hey guys, it's Christian, your Vancouver real estate agent. And the topic for today's video is zoning and land use policies in Vancouver and really how it's affecting affordability, how it's affecting the number of home options that we have. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why I think Vancouver will look like Paris 30, 40, and 50 years from now. And I'm going to explain with you more why and how that looks like. First, before we get into it, a big shout out to the people in the nation of Ukraine and to their brave president. You guys hang tough and you fight that bully off. All right, so let's get into today's video. And what I want to talk to you about is an interesting little conversation. Let's start there. I had with a UBC professor. And she said to me, I know why you guys in Vancouver and in Canada have such high home prices. And the reason is very simple. It's when you're walking residential neighborhoods, you have houses, you have detached homes. And in European cities, we don't have this. People live in apartment blocks. And I thought that was a great point that she made, is that if you were to go to Paris, London, Berlin, or Rome, you don't see people living in a detached single-family house on a 6,000 square foot lot. That is extinct. If you see that, that's out in the countryside somewhere. That's called an estate in Europe. And I believe as we go forward in the next 30, 40 years, you're going to see Vancouver look more like Paris. You're going to see it look more like London. So that the single-family detached house will go extinct. While I grew up in a house like that in Scarborough and in East York and Toronto, future generations won't. And the reason's very simple. There's simply not enough land to accommodate all the immigration, all the people that are moving to our country. And we need these people because there's so many jobs that need to be filled. So we're going to see Vancouver detached homes go extinct. And a good example of this, let's say if you're on Cambie and you're driving south around Queen Elizabeth Park and you're heading towards Marine Drive, you're going to see that there's a lot of 4- and 6-story buildings that are popping up and ringing the streets all the way from 16th right down to Marine Drive. Because a number of years ago, the city of Vancouver rezoned those major arterials for larger buildings and more density. And this has to happen because people need homes. We need more housing options. And the more options there are, obviously, the more affordable homes will be if there's more to choose from. So, and a good example of this would, just to put it in perspective for you, is a map of how dense Vancouver is to a major city like Tokyo. And you can see that in Vancouver, in the same geographic location, there's between 1 and 2 million people, whereas in the city of Tokyo, roughly the same size area, you have almost the same amount of people in Canada living in that same geographic location. I mean, that's incredible when you think about it, that they can pack that many people into Tokyo. And just in case you're thinking like that may be uncomfortable or that's too crowded, you know what? It's not too bad. I lived in Tokyo. I lived there for several years. I love the city. I love the people. It's a very, very convenient place to live. You do not need a car. When I was living there, I didn't have one. I zipped around the city on a scooter. I loved it. It was a very convenient way to travel. And people didn't identify themselves by the neighborhood they lived in. They would say, I live close to 49th Station, or I live close to Production Way Station, because there's so many stations in the city of Tokyo. I would compare it to sort of like 15 SkyTrain lines. Plus, there's the above ground and there's subway networks as well. It's very well serviced, very a comprehensive train network. You really don't need a car in a place like Tokyo. Now, That is the future. That is where Vancouver is going to go. As we become more dense, we will need more transit as well because we want less cars on the streets. Not just because of pollution or noise pollution, but it's just a more effective and efficient way to move droves of people. Now, what is Vancouver City planning? Well, I can tell you that there is some discussion right now at City Hall. Nothing finalized, nothing concrete. On this pilot project to introduce sixplexes and 6 homes in one big structure. And you should see on your screen an example of what one looks like in Toronto. And so the city wants to try this. They want to allow 2,000 lots to be sixplexed. So I think that's a really good first start, because you'd be taking where you now have 2,000 homes, but imagine replacing that with sixplexes. So you'd be going from 2,000 homes to 12,000 homes in the same spaces, which provides a lot more options, and which is really where we're going to go. Now, you got a lot of NIMBYs out there. That's the not in my backyard crowd, right? They're going to complain about more people moving into the city. They're going to complain about traffic, cars parked in front of their house. Look, folks, that is just what's going to happen. As Vancouver grows up, literally grows up, because we need to grow up, we can't sprawl out, you're going to find that there's going to be more people and a little bit more traffic. But there's a lot of things that the cities can do to address that. For example, transit. About 3 years ago, in the last mayoral election, we had the city, at that time, it was Gregor Robertson, the mayor, approved duplexes. So pretty much 90 to 95% of city lots can be duplexed at this point. So a residential house, someone could buy it, tear it down, and build up a duplex. And builders really like that, obviously, because it's a kind of a 2-for-1. So it doesn't cost too much more to build a duplex than it does a single family home, and plus now they get to sell one and then sell the other side and make more money. So, and it addresses some of the housing needs, because now there's 2 options instead of just one that comes to market. Now, again, the NIMBYs are out, and you're going to get a lot of people who complain about character homes. They say, oh my God, you're taking away all the character. To this, I respond, what is exactly character? I mean, this is, in my view, a very fallacious argument. Is character a 1929 house? It's been there almost 100 years. It's dilapidated. It looks old. Does that mean it has character? I mean, if the look of a character home is so important to people, then in new city building bylaws, they can require that new buildings be built to look like 1929 houses. I mean, this is not hard. This is not rocket science. I mean, the whole character argument, I think, is one of the dumbest arguments you will ever hear from the NIMBY crowd. Buildings can be made to look any way the city requires. And it's not that difficult. A few other things. I know over the years, it's probably been about 10 years now since we've had Laneway Homes, and there's been about 5,000, according to what I read online, that have been built. But really, are Laneway Homes the way to go? Probably not. And who really wants to live in a Laneway house? I mean, a lot of these are 600, 650 square feet. You're looking out onto a paved driveway in the back. Really, it's not a long-term solution. So this sixplex idea is an interesting one. Probably won't come before council until 2023. Moving across Boundary Road in Burnaby, something similar is afoot, where the city council there is studying a proposal to build, to allow for laneway homes. Lots in Burnaby are a lot bigger than they are in Vancouver. A lot of lots are 6,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet. You know, on a big space like that, to just have 2 families, it's really not enough. Now, continuing along, you see, for example, of how city bylaws can really stifle development, who can really take housing options off the table instead of putting them on the table. Okay, so here's another example of how zoning bylaws can restrict what gets built. Or let's say city requirement. Anthem Properties bought a site that was a former gas station, a Chevron, at the corner of Georgia, Bidwell, and Alberni. And they bought it for about $72 million back in 2016, 2017. And so you would think, on Georgia, which is as big as a street as it gets in Vancouver, when we're talking 7 lanes of traffic in total, this is the perfect location to build a high-rise, a 50, 60-story building, close to the business district, within about a 12-minute walk of a SkyTrain station. It's really needed. And what did the city do? They only allowed about 34 stories due to shadow restrictions. They said that this building, anything more than about 34 stories, would cast a shadow onto a park in Cole Harbor. And it's a very small park. It's barely used. I think it's a dog park, and there's not that many people who use it, really. And the shadows would really only come in sort of in the late fall, winter months. And if you think about it, in the late fall and winter, we don't exactly get a lot of sunshine here in Vancouver anyway. We got a lot of cloudy days. There's a lot of rainy days, sometimes, 28 to 31 rainy days. So why are we worrying about shadow restrictions? We could have built this tower an extra 16 stories. That could be another 10 units per floor. That could have been another 160 units available to the public. And they're not there because the city said, hey, we're afraid there's going to be shadows here in the winter time on this small dog park. So stuff like that doesn't make sense. And I think as we move through the century, Vancouver really is going to have to grow up. These buildings are going to have to get taller because we can't build out. One look at a map of Vancouver shows you we've got the Pacific Ocean to the west, mountains to the north, and of course the United States border to the south. And you just don't have many other spaces to build. So when we go back to that map of Vancouver, the greater Vancouver area, you can see that when you look at the arrows there's actually in Richmond, and there's a SkyTrain station there. Within 2 kilometers of the SkyTrain station, you will see a blueberry farm. And this is just an incredible comment on the lack of density that we have in the greater Vancouver area. Here you have, within a 12-minute walk of a SkyTrain station, you have a blueberry farm. But at the same time, we got to be smart about how we use our space. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that some of the policies and the proposals being discussed at your local city halls, and at the same time, maybe how land use policies are not very effective, and how this is contributing to not enough options and is increasing the prices for what is out there. So I wanted to share that with you. I hope you found this message of value, and we'll see you next time.